This is Power Hour with Gabriella Power.
Hello and welcome to Power Hour. I'm Gabriella Power. It is great to be with you. There is so much to unpack on this show today after the man who is the front runner to be the President of the United States again, Donald Trump, survived an assassination attempt. And really what we're going to be looking at is the big question: how on earth did this happen?
Take a look at what happened.
We'll look at the chilling new evidence in just a moment, but as we know, the difference between life and death for Donald Trump was milliseconds. Look at this visualisation that shows you how close he was from being killed in front of his supporters and on live television. And this visualisation, which shows you the gunman, 20-year-old Thomas Matthew Crooks, had the perfect shot. So we are learning more and more about what happened in the moments leading up to what almost got the former president killed, and the alarming evidence that the Secret Service had plenty of warning. It's been revealed that Thomas Matthew Crooks was spotted and labelled as a character of suspicion more than an hour before he took his shot. He was also deemed to be a threat 10 minutes before Donald Trump took to the stage, according to a Senate briefing today. And just how long was the shooter, Thomas Matthew Crooks, up on that roof for? Was it a short time? No, it was 26 minutes. 26 minutes before he took his shot. And as the time drew closer to 6:11 when he actually pulled the trigger, people in the crowd were yelling and screaming for authorities to do something.
Yeah, look, there he is.
Because we have millions and millions of people in our country that shouldn't be here. Dangerous people, criminals. We have criminals. We have drug dealers. We have people that should not be here.
Right on the roof.
What's also come out in the last 24 hours is that the shooter's parents contacted law enforcement hours before he opened fire. That's according to Fox News. There's also the question, why didn't drones pick up on this? Since 2021, the Secret Service has spent almost $500,000 on drones, yet none of them were able to detect this. And that doesn't even scratch the surface. It's also been revealed officers were directed to be stationed inside the building. Inside. Not up on the roof where a shooter could possibly be, because according to the head of the Secret Service, that would be too dangerous.
Should that roof have been secure, period?
That building in particular has a sloped roof at its highest point. And so, there's a safety factor that would be considered there, that we wouldn't want to put somebody up on a sloped roof. And so, the decision was made to secure the building from inside.
We wouldn't want to put somebody up on a sloped roof. No, of course not. Not even if the former president's life depended on it. What world are we living in? One where if you're a CNN journalist, you wouldn't want to examine all options.
It almost seems to me, and I think that an investigation is necessary at this point within Congress, not just the FBI, not just others. I look back at it and I'm thinking, all right, for an individual, if you looked at the escalations and how they are trying to approach him, let's just say that it was like, okay, first we want to censor and silence you, then we want to indict and imprison you. Now we're attempting to kill you and take you off the stage.
Let's slow down.
Please.
I'm hearing two things from you. I don't want to jump ahead of things, but I'm also hearing you jumping ahead of things.
Well, actually, I'm just looking at all the different possible capabilities. One of the things as a military member, one of the things as a person who's run in the special operations communities before, one of the people who's actually done this is that you look at all potential analysis, right?
Donald Trump and his team have said,
No, I agree.
Dial it back. Do not blame this on Joe Biden.
Oh, well, actually, I didn't say Joe Biden, to be completely
Who's the
clear.
they then? Let's be very specific.
Well, that's what the investigation has to do. Was it local law enforcement that had made the mistakes, or was there something to it? Was there other types of things that we need to be analyzing or looking at and providing analysis? My point is that when something's so significant, you're talking about something that hasn't happened in decades, right?
I totally.
But my point is this: from a perspective of someone who's actually conducted these are not difficult advances.
It's no wonder people don't listen to the mainstream media anymore. Let's dive deeper into all of this with commentator Brad Palumbo. Brad, it's great to speak with you. What a week, what a roller coaster of emotions we've all been on. But let's start with the failure of the Secret Service. It seems every day we're learning more and more about what happened and more about their failures. What do you make of it?
It's the
failing I've ever seen. And honestly, the incompetence and ineptitude is staggering. It reaches a proportion I didn't know was possible for a supposedly elite federal law enforcement agency. Everything from them having flagged the shooter as a person of interest well before the shooting, to have the shooter having been spotted, having people tell officers that, hey, there's a guy up there with a gun for minutes before the actual shot gets fired. And then it comes down to essentially a stroke of luck. Donald Trump turning his head at the exact second, and thank God he did, because I would be so worried about our country right now if he had been killed. And no matter whether you support him or not, nobody should ever want something like that to happen. But the Secret Service to have decided not to station somebody on the roof because it was slightly sloped. Are you joking? Is this funny? I mean, that doesn't make any sense. They go on sloped roofs all the time, and securing the president and preventing him from getting shot at by a sniper is a little bit more important than risking an injury from the Secret Service having to go out on a sloped roof. I mean, Secret Service agents had to jump in front of bullets. So if you ask me, what's more dangerous here? I mean, the Secret Service has a huge reckoning that it needs to have, and it needs to be heavily investigated to find out, how did this happen? Because this is a failure of truly epic proportions.
And that is the key question. How did this happen? And we cannot let this happen again. There needs to be a full investigation, obviously, and that is happening. But what we have heard from the Secret Service Director, Kimberly Cheadle, who was appointed to the role by President Joe Biden in 2022 and is reportedly friends with Jill Biden, under her direction, the agency set a 30% quota for female hires. Now, not target, but quota. Let's take a look.
To expand hiring, they're aiming to have 30% women recruits by 2030, and even allowed YouTube influencer Michelle Carre to train with agents.
But I'm very conscious, as I sit in this chair now, of making sure that we need to attract diverse candidates.
You know, as a woman who believes in equality, I don't see the value in this, to the point it could actually be a little bit dangerous, because at the risk of stating the obvious, we are built differently to men. What do you make of this quota?
It's identity politics insanity, to the point of, like you said, actually being dangerous. I mean, look, I think women should be able to compete just like men for any other job. I would never support sexist discrimination in the Secret Service or anything else, but women and men are built differently. And the Secret Service, in pursuit of identity politics and feminist quotas, it instituted lower physical standards for female officers. They don't have to meet the same 1.5 mile run time, the same number of sit-ups, of push-ups, of crunches, these kinds of things. And that makes no sense. If women can meet the same standard that is necessary for the job, then of course they should be able to be agents. If there needs to be a height requirement, then men or women who meet the height requirement should be allowed to be it. And you know what? That might mean that you don't have 50%. You don't have perfect equality or equity. But you know what? That's okay. When it comes to matters of literal life and death, like who's going to be protecting the president and the vice president and the first lady, and there is an important role for some female Secret Service officers in, for example, the protection of the first lady. You don't want men going into the bathroom with her, right? But to have identity politics at the forefront of your operations as a supposedly elite security force is madness. Merit should be the only consideration, because we're literally talking about matters of life and death here.
Absolutely. Well said. Now, look, we've been hearing from the Democrats that we need to tone down the language. And of course, the rhetoric has become too heated. But let's look at the Democrats who actually tried to strip Donald Trump of his Secret Service protection. Just 3 months ago, Mississippi Congressman Benny Thompson introduced legislation designed to strip convicted felons, aka Donald Trump, of Secret Service protection, which was supported by other Democrats, including Jasmine Crockett. It's no wonder that people were not all that surprised that someone tried to take a shot at Donald Trump when there have been people openly calling for his protection to go. What do you make of this?
How sick and twisted do you have to be to want to remove security protection from your political opponents so that they're at the mercy of would-be assassins? I mean, I disagree with a lot of people very strongly. I don't ever want to see harm come to them or their families.
Absolutely.
To actually use your status as a member of Congress to try to take away the Secret Service protection of a Republican ex-president, it's just a deeply morally questionable thing to do. It doesn't cost them anything to have him have Secret Service protection. It costs taxpayers, but that's actually the rare thing I'm happy to pay for the government to do. But for them to go out of their way in pursuit of a partisan, vindictive vendetta against Trump to endanger the safety of not just him, but of his family and of the other people at that rally. I mean, if he hadn't had Secret Service there, nothing would have stopped the shooter from shooting again until he hit the president. I mean, the Secret Service were valiant and courageous in the sense that many of the officers stepped up in front of the president and put their bodies on the line. They totally botched many strategic and tactical things, but to not have Secret Service for an ex-president just because you hate him is a delusional, dangerous, and deeply evil thing to try to do. I mean, to me, it just shows how partisan and how tribal and just vindictive some people in our politics have become. It's really disturbing stuff.
Absolutely. Well said. Now let's look at some of the reaction to what happened on Saturday, because most people who are kind-hearted have been praying for Donald Trump and for his family, because what happened on Saturday was absolutely shocking. But unfortunately, that's not the reaction we are seeing from everyone. Let's take a look.
Do you condemn the shooter shooting Donald Trump?
No. Not here, not on this program, not in front of these people. Absolutely.
You do not condemn a deranged shooter shooting Donald Trump.
You are truly just a child. This is not.
Actually, it's not. No, you know what, Charlie?
We're just trying to be decent human
beings. You know what,
beings.
Charlie? It's not actually the behaviour of a child. It's the behaviour of somebody who's completely lost his moral compass.
And how charming is this person who said they are sad that the shooter missed?
Absolutely. You guys are out here on the heels of the attempted Trump assassination. Can I get your reaction to what happened the other day?
Well, it's a shame the person missed, but it's ironic that the shooter was also a Republican.
Brad, I see that and I feel really shocked, and I feel conflicted about even playing it on this show because I don't want to give them airtime, but at the same time we have to call this out because there is a real dangerous tone that exists where people don't see Donald Trump as a human being anymore. I've had hate mail for standing up for the fact that he wasn't killed on Saturday. It is just unbelievable.
Yeah, it is. And the irony is not lost on me that the second person you showed has the rainbow bandana around her face. So much love, so much tolerance, so much progress, right? I mean, look, you have to be sick and twisted to want to see your political opponents die. And we're not just even talking about Trump, though, of course, that applies to him. We're talking about an innocent man who was killed in the background, literally shielding his children with his body from bullets. A man who was a father, who was a volunteer firefighter, lost his life. And you have people like Destiny, the liberal YouTuber with millions of followers that you played in that clip there. You have them basically saying they don't care because they support Trump and Trump really bad. And to me, it's sick and it's twisted. It shows that how tribalism and partisanship can rot and corrode not just one's brain, but also one's soul. Because if you become, and they say, well, Republicans won't condemn political violence, and that might be true for some Republicans out there, but it's literally kindergarten level morality. Two wrongs don't make a right. And you're not supposed to descend into the mud with people and become everything you say you're against. But that's what we're seeing. That is what we're seeing some people do after this tragedy. I mean, are we really at the point where people can't just condemn an attempted assassination?
Yeah.
Your moral compass is just broken beyond repair if you find yourself in that situation. Although I am grateful that I would say most mainstream Democrats have, of course, and this is an extremely low bar. Like, I can't believe we're even here. But most mainstream Democrats, in terms of elected officials, have condemned the shooting and wished Trump well. And obviously that's an incredibly low bar, but at least they didn't trip over it.
Yeah, look, I can't believe it that even after the president was shot in the face, we still have people that say horrendous things. I was up in the cafe yesterday, and someone said to me, oh, you know, Donald Trump, he walked out with a bandage on his ear. Do you think he's milking this? I said, no, I think he was shot in the face. How do those attitudes, like, what else can he do?
I don't know, man. Look, if I'm getting shot in the head, I'd milk it too. I don't think it's milking it to wear a bandage when your ear's been nearly blown off by a centimeter, right? And it's just ridiculous. The same people are being like, wow, well, I heard people unironically criticizing Trump for saying fight, fight, fight on camera after he'd just been shot at. And they're like, he shouldn't use that rhetoric. And I'm like, he was just shot at. You people are
unbelievable.
insane.
You know, I think I know the clip you're referring to. It was on CNN, and I want to talk to you about the media's role in this, because CNN's coverage of the attempted assassination on Donald Trump was just appalling. But let's look at some of the comments afterwards. And I played that clip earlier where a CNN host freaked out at the concept that all avenues need to be investigated. Let's just play a little bit more.
As a military member, one of the things that we do is we what if scenario everything in the world, right? That's
I
how
know,
we
but I don't know. I'm just saying,
when
if
I
it's
look at
the what if that you talk about maybe in an investigation, and the what if that you are presenting on live television. I don't know. It's just,
well. So listen, I'm a public official.
Yes.
Anything that I do, anything that I say in the public. I don't try and hide it in private. I think that the American people need transparency, accountability, and accessibility to the elected officials, not to try and hide behind what we want to look at. And I also think that if the American people know that we're questioning these things as well, it puts them at rest to at least know, why aren't they at least looking into this? Why? We should look at every single situation which is of this significance. We should look at it from multiple angles to ensure that nothing is left out, nothing could be potentially claimed as being covered up.
Yeah.
We need to have more transparency to the American people, and I think that's what everyone deserves.
Brad, what's your reaction to this?
Well, it's really quite something to watch this CNN host freak out and try to shut down her guest, who, let's be clear, is not some random talking head like me, right? This is Corey Mills, who was a former sniper in the military who worked on security details for VIPs, including the vice president some years ago. So this guy knows what he's talking about. And he's saying that the strategic failing is so extreme and so glaring and so shocking that an investigation should at least consider all the possibilities, including some degree of intentionality. Obviously, there's no evidence of that now. Obviously, we don't want to jump to conspiracy theories. Obviously, things that can be explained through incompetence, usually that's the explanation rather than something complex and sinister and conspiratorial. But all he's saying is we should investigate every avenue and every possibility. And they're like, oh, no, you can't say that. Meanwhile, the same network spewed conspiracy theories about Donald Trump and Russia for years.
Absolutely.
No regrets and very few corrections. But and he's not engaging in a conspiracy theory, right? He's not saying, yes, this is a setup, this was staged, or this was intentional, or anything like that. No conspiracy. He's just saying we should investigate every possibility. To me, I'm a person who never leaps to, the most extreme conclusions or the conspiracies, but I at least want all avenues explored when
100%.
We're talking about one of the biggest security failures I've ever seen. Why wouldn't you want everything investigated? Because now you can never say never. We live in a crazy time. We've seen crazy things, and there's not a 0% chance. Obviously, we have no evidence. We don't want to get ahead of the facts, but why would anyone who's a journalist be opposed to simply investigating all avenues and all possibilities? To me, that just seems like common sense.
Yeah, you think so. That doesn't appear to be a lot of common sense at CNN. But finally, Brad, I could talk to you for hours. It's been confirmed that US President Joe Biden has COVID-19. He's tested positive. Let's look at Joe Biden's interview, the first one that he gave after Donald Trump was almost murdered on stage, and just see if you can make sense of what he's saying.
If you were to continue to run and be officially nominated, what happens if you have another episode like we saw during the debate?
What happens if another?
Yeah, what happens if you have another performance on that on that level?
I don't plan on having another performance on that level.
All right.
Did you get that? Is it clear?
Look, I've seen that clip about 10 times, and I still have no idea what the word in his first answer was supposed to be. But wow, just wow. I mean, this guy is he's not reassuring us at all. He continues to make gaffes and missteps every single time he opens his mouth or is recorded anywhere. And if you're going out there and you're trying to convince us that this guy is A-OK, sharp as a tack, can totally handle the nuclear codes, then you've just drunk the Kool-Aid. You are sunk into delusion beyond repair. I don't know how many times people need to see Biden slur his words or call out to dead people before they wake up and smell the roses. If Democrats had any clue, if they wanted any hope of avoiding Trump being the next president, which you'd think as Democrats would be their main objective, they would get this guy out of the race. They would convince him to step aside, and they would put up literally anyone else. But they've put themselves in a real bind by picking Kamala Harris, who's also not very popular, as his vice president. And Biden, I think, has a bit of a God complex. I've said this before. He thinks he's the only one who can save America from Trump or something ridiculous. And I don't see him giving it up. So you can expect, like, look, nobody ages backwards. He's only going to get worse. So even between now and November, you can expect more of this, and honestly, for it to continue to get worse. And then imagine over the next 4 years, if he were reelected, which looks unlikely, but if he were, how much more he would decline. I mean, by the end of it, I think that he would just be totally incoherent 100% of the time, instead of just, 50% of the time, or wherever he's at now. It can always get worse. Never forget it.
Absolutely. Brad Palumbo, so great to speak with you. Thank you so much for joining us on Power Hour.
Thank you.
Joining us is CEO and founder of Small Business Women Australia, Amanda Rose. Amanda, great to be with you. Let's get into the media's coverage of the assassination attempt on former US President Donald Trump, because some media outlets didn't want to admit that that was what was happening. Let's take a look at the Washington Post. They referred to the gunshots as loud noises. The NBC called it popping noises. And of course, CNN finished it by describing it as an interruption. It was an assassination attempt.
Yes.
What's your reaction to these headlines?
If anything, this is actually really good for every single person in the world to know that those publications should never be trusted. So you should eliminate reading them knowing that they've deliberately avoided talking about the truth. It's obvious they don't want people taking Trump's side, and they're worried about who was behind it. This is a classic case that they're not sharing any truth ever. But when it comes to Trump, they go the other way. They actually try to dilute what's happened to him. Imagine if this was reversed. Imagine if that was Biden. There'd be shut down. Schools would be shut down. Everything would be shut down. It'd be, assassination attempt, and they'd be blaming the Trump supporters.
Of course.
That he incited this. It's the hypocrisy, and we always talk about hypocrisy. The hypocrisy is insane. So this is a really good sign for people to turn away from the mainstream media that lie or hold back information and go elsewhere.
Well, the closer you look at the mainstream media, you can see that the media in the US has spent the last 4 years trying to hide that Joe Biden is barely functioning. He's clearly has some sort of cognitive decline, while portraying Donald Trump as a real danger, right? Yes. And just take a look at this clip from CNN.
To open up a copy of Hitler's Mein Kampf, you would find the Nazi leader describing the mixing of non-Germans with Germans as poisoning. There's really no other way to say it. Donald Trump's language mirrors this directly.
And let's look at this language from the left when it comes to violence against Trump.
I said if we were in high school, I'd take him behind the gym and beat the hell out of him.
I will go and take Trump out tonight.
Running away from Donald Trump, I think you need to go back and punch him in the face.
They're still going to have to go out and put a bullet in Donald Trump, and that's a fact.
He is destructive to our democracy, and he has to be eliminated.
Why is that okay?
It's not. These are grown adults. These are adults, and these are people that are leading families, they're leading communities, they're management or leaders in companies. This is horrific, and we need to be very clear that, like Tucker Carlson said, a lot of the mainstream media just get handed a script.
Yeah.
And you can follow that script or you'll lose your job, essentially. And a lot of them fear that. And so really what you've got is just a bunch of puppets that just regurgitate, and they allow this type of language to get out into the TV, out into the world. And On the flip side, they're also saying that children are exposed to shocking information online. How are you any better with what you're saying on mainstream TV?
Yeah, I think it's also people are living in echo chambers, right? And so there's just one narrative that they just keep hearing, they just keep saying, and then it gets to the point where they don't see Donald Trump as a human being anymore. I've had people, friends of mine, say, oh, I actually have just been kind of taught that, Donald Trump equals bad.
Yes.
And that,
but that's
how
propaganda.
dangerous is that?
That is classic propaganda. The government and or media pushing a particular narrative, brainwashing people. So it's up to the individual, like I've always said, just because someone's called a conspiracy theorist, just because you don't agree with someone, whatever it is, ask the question, you go, hang on a minute, why am I believing someone who has lied to me before?
Yeah, and they'll lie to you again. I just think it's so important that if you believe this, if you've reached the point, and you can't really blame people if Australians, Americans, whoever they are, they've been watching CNN for this amount of time.
Pumped with fear.
They've actually so pumped with fear that they think that Donald Trump is this evil person. I think if you've reached that conclusion, hopefully now that you've seen him take a bullet for America, you can actually look at yourself and go, actually, maybe we have been lied to. Maybe we can look at this guy as a human being, as a candidate, rather than some kind of evil force.
That's right.
But what I found really quite powerful with Donald Trump, which we saw in the seconds after he was almost killed, was this moment.
Wait.
To have the instincts to say that, to give his supporters what they needed in that moment, what it also shows you is this is a guy who can think quickly. He can act quickly, as opposed to the guy, the 81-year-old, who's apparently running the country right now.
Yeah, well, we know he's not. But also, this is leadership, right? Leadership is knowing what people need in that second. He's not afraid to stand up and speak up and say what needs to be said. You don't have to like him, but you need to respect the fact that when you're in a situation where there's danger or there's something like that, you want someone leading. You want someone that's confident to say, don't worry, I'm still in control, and that's what he did.
Absolutely, and those images are going viral. He knew that. He knew that in that moment it was more important to put his fist up in the air
Give
and
people
say,
hope.
Fight. Absolutely.
Yeah, you actually watch the crowd just change. When he did that, they were like, yes.
Instantly.
Imagine what would happen, the hopelessness if he had been killed.
Oh my goodness, it scares me to think. I'm so grateful that this is a program where we're talking about Trump survived, because who knows what would have happened, what the world would look like. But look, the images of that moment in time where Donald Trump had his fist in the air, he was chanting, fight, fight, fight. They've gone viral, and now they're available on T-shirts for as little as $4 on China's e-commerce platforms. Now, look, I don't really know much about anime, but an anime recreation of Donald Trump's assassination attempt has also gone viral on Chinese social media platforms. So what does that tell you about how people around the world have been reacting to this moment?
It's telling you that people have been craving and in desiring and needing a leader, and they just saw one. So so many people didn't like Trump, now they do.
Yeah.
Because it was the leadership, it was the fact that he's stoic, he's stood up and he's just went, I'm going to fight. Most people are attracted to that, and we're lacking that. We are lacking leadership so much in this world, and if anyone shows any qualities of good quality, strong leadership, they get demonised. So what people have said is, great, this is someone I can look up to, someone that I can trust to carry us through, because in today's society, it's just horrific.
Whether you like him or not, people have his issues with him. He's certainly not perfect, but you can't deny that he's a strong, fierce and brave leader, and he's shown that to us all.
That's right, and that's what people need to realise. You don't have to like everything about everyone. You don't have to tick all the boxes. You don't have to say, I agree with everything, therefore I'll support you. Look at his leadership, look at his compassion, look at his economic management. They were all green ticks versus the country under the leadership now is falling to pieces.
It certainly is. Donald Trump has revealed who will be his running mate, JD Vance. What are your thoughts on this pick?
Not a fan.
Okay.
I think I get concerned because the last VP that he picked was a bit of a snake to him. And so I'm concerned that mostly when you pick a male as a VP, especially this particular one, who really wanted to push his profile for a very long time now, male VPs want to be president. He needs someone that's going to support him and be loyal to him and not turn around and try and, stab him in the back or take his position.
But if he's playing the long game, he doesn't have to do that. Donald Trump's 77, 78, and JD Vance is 39. If he wants to be president in 4 years' time, he could be.
Yes, but he has said some comments about Trump previously that I wasn't a fan of, and they really were signs of jealousy. And that is also very, jealousy, who can stand against it? It's quite a dangerous thing. So I think time will tell, but my instincts are telling me that he's potentially dangerous to Trump.
Okay, well, we'll watch this space. Look, a phone call between RFK Jr. and Donald Trump has been leaked. Let's take a listen.
I just turned my head to show the chart, and something wrapped me. It felt like a giant, like the world's largest mosquito. And it was a bullet going around. What do they call that, an AR-15 or something? That was a big gun.
Apart from that audio grab, no one's really talking about RFK Jr. anymore, but what do you make of that?
Interesting. So I like that they're having conversations, and I think it's powerful because remember RFK was going to be a part of Trump's original team when he was first in, but he bumped him, right, for someone who ended up being, quite, again, a bad choice. He got rid of all the good people like RFK. RFK would have been a great VP and everyone's talking about that. I still think there's a chance for him because they're both still very different. Right? So Trump is very much a leader and so forth, but RFK represents all those people that pushed against the mandates and the COVID vaccinations. Yeah. And that is still a very real issue for millions of people around the world. It is. And the thing is, if these people weren't ignored by their governments and were treated with respect and compassion by something they were forced to take, then maybe this wouldn't happen. Maybe RFK wouldn't be so popular. But he's popular because he fought evil and he won.
Absolutely. Well said. Watch this space as well with what's going to happen with RFK Jr. Finally, actually, we've got more to get through, but Secret Service. So many failures. Yeah. Should the head of the Secret Service go?
Look, there are so many failures. I'm starting to think it was deliberate.
Well, you're not the only one who is putting that out there. Obviously, nothing's been proven. Yep. It's a theory. It's a theory that's going around.
Well, when you think about it, these are highly qualified people. People also pointed out that person that was on the roof. So all the factors point to, did you know about this? Was this a setup? And we know in the history over time, when there is a president or potential candidate that is a danger, they want them eliminated.
It's scary. You see so many clips going around on X. A lot of people are trying to put the pieces together themselves. Right. But we're just learning more and more evidence about they knew that there was a threat an hour before Donald Trump really took to the stage. And the guy was on the roof for 26 minutes.
That's right.
It's unbelievable. These aren't conspiracy theories. This is
fact. And that's the thing. These are facts. And I believe that there is something going on, whether we're going to find out about it or not, because a lot of people will be too scared to speak up. Imagine someone from the Secret Service wanting to speak up like you would if you're from Boeing. They're starting to freak out. So hopefully God will expose who was behind it and that every single person in this world will see what's really going on.
Finally, have to get your thoughts on Elon Musk. He's moving the headquarters of two of his companies, X and also SpaceX, to Texas from California. And this is over a new gender identity law that he is described as the last straw. He also believes that more US companies are going to follow his lead. What do you make of his decision to move his companies from California to Texas?
Every right to. And I think that's what's great about America, that you can move state if you don't agree with the laws of that state. And that's a democracy, and that's what we need. So if you relate to or connect with a particular, state or regional group, go there, right? But also don't forget, he's a businessman. So his bottom line isn't about the community. His bottom line is about making sure he's making money. And we need to be very clear about that. You can agree with him, not agree with him, or like what he does, but he's still a businessman. And sometimes we get a bit carried away with, yes, isn't that great that he's moving because we don't agree with that too. But yes, I guarantee if you follow the money, it's the fact that there's probably better tax benefits for him.
And he's now coming out and supporting Donald Trump officially after Saturday.
Well, I think a lot of people are coming out to support Donald Trump. When you survive an assassination attempt, and then get up and fight and push forward, you garner respect from a lot of people.
Yeah,
And I like that.
I think we're seeing that now.
Yeah.
Amanda Rose, thank you so much for joining us on Power Hour. Joining us now is Dr. Roger Giewolb, finance entrepreneur and geopolitics expert and a friend of Donald Trump. Roger, great to see you. It's been so moving to see Donald Trump surrounded by friends and families and supporters at the Republican National Convention just days after he was shot in the face. How has his assassination attempt impacted you? And can I get your reaction to it?
Well, it's been a real shock. I mean, it's a shock to see anybody that you know. In fact, I mean, just people that you know by sight and don't even know well. You just kind of know they exist as human beings in your aura, and to see them shot like that, I'm still, I don't think, over it. It's just to see somebody that you know and that you speak to and that you sat with and stuff, and be hit by a bullet, and especially in a circumstance where if he hadn't looked away at the illegal immigration chart, his head would have been blown apart like JFK's. It's just, and the world would have changed forever dramatically. It just doesn't even bear thinking about.
Absolutely. It was just so close. Donald Trump has released a new campaign ad. Let's take a look.
Let me tell you something you already know. The world ain't all sunshine and rainbows. It's a very mean and nasty place, and I don't care how tough you are, it will beat you to your knees and keep you there permanently if you let it. You, me, or nobody is gonna hit as hard as life. But it ain't about how hard you hit. It's about how hard you can get hit and keep moving forward. How much you can take and keep moving forward. That's how winning is done.
It's pretty powerful. CNN's also reporting that Donald Trump may not reach just 270 electoral college votes in November, but 330. How has what happened on Saturday, how do you think that's actually going to impact his chances on November 5?
A lot of the reports and intelligence that I'm reading, Gabriella, are saying slightly, but I think it will be a lot more than that. America right now needs a hero, and he's shown that he's a hero, and it's just so ironic. I feel sorry for him that poor, President Trump takes a bullet and poor Joe Biden gets COVID. I mean, it's just crazy. But somebody, I said a long, long time ago, and I've been saying ever since, that someone said long ago, with every major election, something always happens out of the blue that nobody expected right before, the finish line, which changes everything.
Yeah, fair point. Well, this certainly has changed a lot. 2 days after Donald Trump was shot, he announced his running mate, 39-year-old from Ohio, J.D. Vance, who has an incredible rag to riches story. And let's take a listen.
He just said, look, I think we've got to go save this country. I think you're the guy who can help me in the best way. You can help me govern. You can help me win. You can help me in some of these Midwestern states like Pennsylvania, Michigan, and so forth. And he said rightfully that we have been very, very close for a long time, but especially since I endorsed you in 2022. And I would not have won that race without Donald Trump's endorsement. And the president's trust then and his partnership since then has been something I value a great deal.
That is J.D. Vance speaking at the Republican National Convention. I just think the timing of this is quite incredible, that Trump was nearly killed. 2 days later, he makes this announcement. It's almost as if he's setting up the MAGA movement, that if this was to happen again, we know who's next in line. But what do you make of J.D. Vance, and what, was he a good pick?
Well, you got to remember that Donald Trump invented the original Apprentice, and all around the world there are TV series called The Apprentice, and none of them is as good or as rich as the original. And the guy was a talent picker for what is it, 3, 4 decades. He really knows how to pick people. I think J.D. Vance is a marvelous pick. He represents a number of things that may not be obvious to people who aren't American. So, first of all, he comes from the Midwest, like I do. The Midwest is regarded in America, in the zeitgeist, in the culture, in the ethos, as truthful, honest, fair, real, solid American values. Abraham Lincoln. I mean, you've got a big mouth, hard as nails, tough talking New Yorker in Trump, but you've got a gentler, kinder Midwesterner in J.D. Vance. And the culture goes way back hundreds of years. Books like Winesburg, Ohio, and that which embody the whole Midwest culture. It says a lot to Americans. Secondly, he does come from a very, very dysfunctional and difficult upbringing, and his life also touched on something further south, which is Appalachia, which is where the hill people live, the hillbillies, as they're called, somewhat pejoratively. And that's a culture that's very, very poor and doesn't strive to get out of that poverty. And in fact, they're down on themselves. And that's what his book, Hillbilly Elegy, is about. And he really touched, bestseller, he touched the hearts. And so his second quality is that he really understands poverty and poor people and working class people and the MAGA people and the people that Trump wants to better their lives and represent. So, I mean, he's another hero in the making. He's just a great pick, and he's got very firm views, which I think align with Trump and most of the Republicans. So I think on all counts, it's brilliant. But it doesn't surprise me because the boss of The Apprentice is probably the only person in the world who could pick exactly the right guy at the right time and convey exactly the message that you just said, which is, after all, so clever.
What I find really interesting is that he wasn't originally a Trump supporter. And I think we're really seeing that in this election campaign. We're seeing a lot of people that didn't like Trump. They didn't vote for him in 2020. They didn't vote for him in 2016. But this time around, they are. Why do you think that is?
Well, again, it's a wonderful message. In other words, instead of all the fabulous candidates he had around him, all of whom have been his ardent supporters, and we're all fighting sort of in the sandbox in debates that he wouldn't attend and said, why should I? This is actually recruitment for my VP. Of all those people who supported him, he very, very astutely, strategically, and cleverly picked somebody who had been his adversary to show how open-minded and fair he is and how critical and strategic his judgment is. Don't pick somebody I like. Don't pick somebody who sucks up to me. Pick somebody who's right for this moment. I think he would have picked Vance without the assassination attempt.
Right. What are you expecting to hear from Donald Trump? We know that he tore up the original speech he was set to make at the Republican National Convention. He's written a new one, which is expected to be largely about unity. What do you think we're going to hear from Donald Trump?
I think we're going to hear a lot of words about unity and coming together and working together and all the rest. And I think that'll last a few weeks because I think they'll go for him again. And as his son said today, he's going to counterpunch right back. I mean, that's American politics, and the Democrats have been playing very dirty. And they're not going to stop because of this, but there'll be words both sides about goodwill and fellowship and playing fair. But I think it will start again pretty soon, and reach quite a fever pitch before the convention. All depends whether Joe Biden stays or not.
Do you think now that Joe Biden has announced that he has COVID, there's speculation online that maybe this is a medical announcement that he might use this as an excuse to drop out of the race?
Well, anybody can get COVID, and apparently it said his symptoms are mild. I mean, the first question, Gabriella, is medically what will happen to him? Will it disable him? Will it enfeeble him? And if it does, then I think it's a foregone conclusion. But if he bounces back from COVID in a week or so, I don't think it will really have any bearing. It's a bug and anybody could get it. It's just unfortunate it comes now. And that aside, I still think the pressure is going to mount on him to drop out, because he can't serve as president for another 4 years. It's just not possible.
The clock is ticking and it doesn't sound like he wants to drop out, but we'll see. We are learning more about what unfolded on Saturday, including reports that Secret Service had flagged that Thomas Matthew Crooks as suspicious more than an hour before he took his shot at Donald Trump. Was this a massive failure by the Secret Service?
I mean, on the face of it, sure. I mean, this guy walked in with a rangefinder, and that raised their suspicions, and they followed him around. But the police then lost him, apparently. But there's so many videos, on people's mobile phones, people's cell phones, showing him sitting on the roof with people screaming to the Secret Service and the police to do something. There are videos that show I mean, the big thing for me was that the lady who runs the Secret Service said, look, we couldn't put people on that roof because it's a sloped roof, and health and safety would dictate it was dangerous. And then, of course, somebody came up and said, look at the roof the snipers were on. It was even more sloped. What are you talking about? I mean, there's so many things that don't hang together here. I don't believe that this was just some local nutter, end of story. I don't know what the explanation is, but it's got to be more than that. Nobody could get near him like that without some gross incompetence or worse. And I dread to think what the worse is, but it's kind of like JFK. Maybe we'll never know the answer, but there's so much stuff floating around, as there wasn't in the days of JFK, on film, on social media. A lot of it's probably fake, but it just doesn't compute. It doesn't hang together. I'm very confused.
Why has no one stood down over this? Where is the accountability?
I'm sorry?
Where is the accountability? We've seen no one stand down over this.
Well, I mean, the accountability in what I've seen today seems to be the Secret Service laying it off on the local police force. But I think that the Secret Service is responsible for their subjects' safety, regardless of local law enforcement or anybody else. I mean, if they pick a platoon of Marine commandos and they fail, they're still the ones where the buck stops. The Secret Service has got the ultimate responsibility. So I don't understand these things I'm hearing. I mean, there's certainly, some fairly, useless behavior. The video of that young lady who can't get her gun back in her holster is quite worrying. If you've seen that. I mean, yeah, I'm sure. And to let somebody through with a rangefinder and let him in wandering around, but I don't buy the sloped roof story, because the snipers are on a much more sloped roof. I mean, it sounds like an HR, a human resources. I don't want to insult HR, but I mean, it sounds like some box ticking person. Oh, we couldn't let them up there because of health and safety. I mean, come on, you're the Secret Service. You're armed to the teeth. You're supposed to kill on sight. What are you talking about? So there's just so much going on that needs to be explained. And the question is, who's going to investigate it? The FBI is investigating now, but Trump has been saying for ages that Biden has weaponized the Department of Justice, which includes the FBI, and he's weaponized the CIA, and he's weaponized all these other agencies against him. So, just like the courts, how's he going to get a fair trial? How's he going to get a fair investigation? Who's going to come in and look at this? I'll be very interested to see what he says in his speech, if anything, about this. But I mean, just everybody I talk to has a feeling that, there's something more here. Let's put it that way. And they just don't know how to get to it.
Just finally, before I let you go, you've spent time with Donald Trump, you've been to Mar-a-Lago. There is still an anti-Donald Trump sentiment that exists here in Australia and other parts of the world, to the point people are saying pretty disgusting things online that, you know, the shooter missed, and that was something along those lines. There are comments that are made at cafes. What would you say about Donald Trump to people who haven't had the opportunity of meeting him? What is he like?
What is he like personally?
Yeah.
He's a big, tall, strapping guy. He looks about 10 years younger in person than he does on the screen. He plays golf most every day. He's very fit. When he walks in the room, he's just got an incredible energy. The aura is amazing. I mean, the room just reverberates when he walks in without even saying a word. He's got a very funny and sarcastic sense of humor. He's sharp. When he speaks to you, you think you're the only person he's speaking to. He can be incredibly charming. And I suppose people who absolutely can't stand him would probably be wound around his little finger in 5 minutes if he wants to turn the charm on. He's very intelligent. He's not the most patient person, from what I can see. Has a very inquiring mind, and he's just a hell of a lot of fun to be around. He's very, very interesting guy. And he showed on Saturday, you know, I mean, how many people would have stood up and given that defiant, you know, fist shaking and moved on the way he did? He's a real American hero, and that's what people want. So even people who don't like him, I dare say, would like him more if they were in his presence. And he's a real charmer. He'd make sure they do.
Dr. Roger G. Well, so great to speak with you. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Donald Trump has surged ahead in the presidential election polls, but his return to the White House could mean disaster for Prince Harry. Riley Sullivan is a reporter here at skynews.com.au, and he's always across the latest headlines from the royal family. Riley, great to be with you.
Great to see you.
So Donald Trump is leading in the polls in many battleground states for the US presidential election, but why could Trump's possible return to the White House spell trouble for Prince Harry?
Right. So obviously, you know, Donald Trump surging ahead this week on the back of an assassination attempt. I mean, you know, huge news in America. And we know that, you know, he's spoken out previously about Prince Harry. A few months ago in an interview, he was asked directly about it. He said, you know, would you deport Prince Harry? What this hinges on is admissions that Harry made in his memoir, Spare. Of course, in Spare, Harry opened up about using a range of illicit substances. And typically, you know, that can disqualify you from permanent residency or citizenship in the US. You know, this isn't unprecedented. Nigella Lawson, you know, another major celebrity from England, she was at one point denied entry to the US based on previous drug admissions.
Right.
So there's a precedent here, but certainly the Biden administration has not been interested in reviewing it. They have always protected Harry's privacy and said that they have no interest in reviewing it. But Trump could, you know, he said he'd look into it and possibly deport Harry. So I don't know. I mean, you know, it's difficult to say, but I'm sure from Harry and Meghan's point of view, they're looking at what's happening in the US and thinking, you know, this could have implications for them.
Absolutely. I'm sure they're following it very closely.
Absolutely.
Now let's talk about Princess Catherine. She made her grand return to Wimbledon on Sunday, and the entire arena stood up for the Princess of Wales. What has the public's reaction been to Kate's appearance?
Yes, so I mean, this was a huge moment for Kate. This is only the second time that we've seen her out in public since her cancer diagnosis. Of course, she had the appearance at Trooping the Colour, but this was, you know, a huge return for Kate. As you said, having the entire arena stand on their feet. I got goosebumps watching it. I don't know about you, but you know, a huge moment. And you kind of have to laugh because I kind of think about, you know, the sporting culture in Australia and, you know, when you go to the Australian Open, and, you know, our own Prime Minister doesn't get that kind of treatment. So I think it really just showed, you know, how much the public cares for Kate. In terms of, you know, where she'll be going in the next couple of months, we know that she'll probably be going to Balmoral in Scotland next month to join the rest of the royal family for their summer vacation. But I think it's going to be more of the same. I think that for the time being, we'll be seeing her, you know, based on her health and how she's doing and popping up when she feels comfortable and up to it.
She looked absolutely beautiful, didn't she? Wearing that dress, the Power Hour colours, I think.
The power, the purple, yeah.
What an inspiration. You know, this woman has been diagnosed with cancer. She's been through so much. So many people have been trolling and going through, expressing wild conspiracy theories about her and her family. So for her to bravely appear and just be such a presence and really give people hope. I'm so pleased to see that she got that standing ovation.
And she's such an asset to the royal family. You know, her grace throughout this whole process, you know, even before her cancer announcement, you know, the global speculation, the social media stuff, she's just been, you know, such a pillar of strength within herself.
Absolutely.
And I'm sure it hasn't been easy. I mean, you know, I know she has a great support system, of course, William and her family and the Middletons, but yeah, she really is a testament to the monarchy.
Absolutely, well said. We heard this week that Prince Harry's publishers are having problems releasing the paperback version of Harry's memoir, Spare. Why are Harry's publishers reportedly asking the Duke of Sussex for more material?
Right, so, you know, Spare's been out for a while now. I mean, it came out in hardback 18 months ago, which is quite a while. I mean, that's a pretty big gap. Usually publishers, when they publish these books, of course, they come out in hardback and then, you know, a few months later, they try to rush a paperback edition, which is something, you know, a little bit more cheaper. It's kind of what you pick up at the airport. And typically, you know, a paperback includes maybe some new information or an epilogue, or they'll add something extra to it. So supposedly Harry's publishers, you know, they have not released any paperback edition of Spare, which is kind of funny. And some people believe it's because, you know, they want a little bit of extra information. They want maybe new chapters or an update from Harry. And that's a problem because, as we know, you know, Harry's very much been sidelined. I don't know if he's got a lot of royal secrets left. So
surely not. Surely he's spilled them all.
So it's kind of, you know, when we've discussed on this show before about would Harry write another memoir, well, at this point it seems like, you know, if he can't even get a paperback version out of Spare because he hasn't got anything to say, I don't know, maybe that's it for the books.
Oh, I suspect that he'll find something. He'll dig up some old secrets or just rehash some ones that he's already spilled. But we'll see. We'll wait and see. Princess Beatrice has had her royal protection officers reinstated after speculation that she could become a working royal. What's the new security protocol for Beatrice, and is this a sign of a bigger role for her?
Yeah, I mean, this was quite surprising. You know, Beatrice and Eugenie are blood-born royals, as they say. They're the only princesses from their generation. If you look at the Windsor grandchildren of Queen Elizabeth II, they're the only princesses. So it is kind of crazy in a way that they're not working royals, but certainly, I mean, that's been the status quo now for over a decade. They have their own careers, their own lives. You know, they do pop up at some royal events, but for all intents and purposes, they're not working royals. So this is a pretty big change. Beatrice has had her protection officers reinstated, which would indicate that, you know, the monarchy is looking to use her more at public events. It's not a full-time protection officer. Some royals, for example, Kate and William or the King, they travel full-time with a protection staff. She will only be having this when she's doing public events for the royals. But, you know, I reckon this is a pretty positive sign for Beatrice. I mean, you know, there's been a lot of speculation if she even wants to be a working royal, because she kind of has it pretty good now. You know, she gets a lot of the benefits of being a royal, but she can also be a private person. But I wouldn't be surprised if this is a sign of Charles really giving Beatrice more of a public role.
Okay, Riley Sullivan, you are across it all. Thank you so much.
Great to see you.
That is it for Power Hour. Thank you for your company. We'll see you next week. Make sure you subscribe to Sky News Australia on YouTube.